First general question, how's the business doing here in Hong Kong?
At Tesla, we're super appreciative of Hong Kong. It's the city, I believe at this point, the most number of Teslas per capita.
Yeah.
I think it's a very exciting, I think, model in Hong Kong, because I think Hong Kong will have over time the highest percentage of electric vehicles of any city in the world, and it can therefore serve as a model for how other high-density cities around the world can transform to a sustainable transport future. So I think that's very exciting. So we plan to work closely with the Hong Kong government and to take lessons learned and see what we can do to then propagate that to cities around the world. We're very excited about the partnership with Hong Kong.
Yeah, because Hong Kong is such a densely packed city, there's no range anxiety in Hong Kong, but that's not the only factor behind the popularity of the Tesla. What are the other factors?
Sure. Well, I think certainly range not being an issue is one factor, although that is counterbalanced by challenges with charging.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we need to work through, and this is a challenge that any other dense city in the world has, is as you have more and more electric vehicles on the roads, you have to find some place to charge them. And the ideal place to charge the car is at your home or office, essentially the same place that you charge your phone. But this is challenging because a lot of apartment buildings, well, most apartment buildings didn't anticipate having that level of power in the garage, and sometimes the parking spot float around, they're not consistent. So it's going to be quite important to get the power to the buildings that need it, and figure out a good and convenient way for people to charge at home. We are deploying a lot of superchargers, and of course that's going to be important, but those are really meant for when you have an unusually long trip and you've been away from your home or office for a while, or you need to top up and you're out and about. But by far the most convenient is home or office charging, and that's the thing that we're really working closely with the Hong Kong government on.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, about the impact of falling oil prices, because high oil prices was a major selling point for getting into hybrids or electric vehicles. Right. Now that oil prices are in free fall, what does that mean for the industry?
Well, it definitely makes the transition to sustainable energy more difficult.
Yeah.
And I think no doubt that is going to dampen interest in electric vehicles in general. With our cars, what we aspire to do is to make the car so compelling that even with low gasoline prices, it's still the car you want to buy.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
That's the only sort of. What else we could do, really.
You have to make it compelling. So,
yes, exactly.
And this is really at the key of Tesla, is to create an electric car that's not worthy, it's going to help the environment, but it is a car that you will covet, that you want to drive. That happens to be very good for the climate change, or very good for the environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is sort of general advice I'd give to people starting companies, to entrepreneurs in general, is really focus on making a product that your customers love. Yeah. And it's so rare that you can buy a product and you love the product when you bought it. There are very few things that fit into that category. And if you can come up with something like that, your business will be successful for sure.
Let's talk about China. China is the world's largest auto market. China is also, it's a growing electric vehicle market too. It's soon to be the world's largest there. World's largest carbon emitter. We've seen the return of the so-called airpocalypse and crazy bad air days in places like Shenyang and Beijing, especially during the wintertime. China needs your technology. Is China really aware of that? Do you get that sense? And if you don't mind, if you could hold the mic a little bit closer.
Sorry, yeah, absolutely. China is definitely aware of Tesla. I've had a number of high-level meetings with the Chinese government. And in fact, the Minister of Finance recently mentioned Tesla in a speech that he gave.
Oh wow!
As a good example. Yeah. Actually, he likes what we're doing.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then last year we, in an effort to help the rest of industry and just sort of kind of be a good neighbor, we open sourced all of our patents. So any company in China or elsewhere can use our patents to create electric vehicles.
Oh, wow.
So.
Wow. And what you're doing there just really underscores a theme that emerged at the latest climate change conference in Paris, the debate on whether developed countries should be doing more to help developing countries, when the goal is a general shared goal. And you're saying a company from a developed country should be doing that little bit more in a market like China.
I agree, although quite frankly, I think China is quite well
It's quite developed,
I mean,
yeah.
you know, let me tell you, China has better highways and definitely better trains than the United States.
Yeah.
By far, okay. In fact, I had a great experience taking the bullet train from Beijing to Xi'an to see the Terracotta Warriors.
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, it was a great experience.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think the challenge for Tesla is that in China we need to establish sort of a local partnership.
Yeah.
And so we're going to kind of figure that out.
There is the issue of pollution in China, the need for sustainable energy solutions in China. Gridlock is a huge issue in places like Beijing. I don't know if you've been stuck in Beijing traffic. I've been stuck in Beijing. Yeah,
it's pretty crazy.
Everyone here who's traveled to China, you're stuck in, it's pretty crazy. Can Tesla Autopilot provide some sort of a solution to that?
Well, I think Autopilot can certainly take the edge off. Because our autopilot capability right now is really good in two scenarios. Either we're on a highway where there's no traffic and the lines are quite clear, or in heavy traffic. So it's super good in heavy traffic. Not that I'd recommend it, but you can read a book or do email, is what I've found. So it can really take the edge off the traffic, but I'm actually quite a big fan of tunnels. Tunnels are so underappreciated.
Please elaborate.
The fundamental problem with cities is that we build cities in 3D.
Yeah.
I mean, you see you've got these tall buildings with lots of people on each floor, but then you've got roads which are 2D.
Yeah.
So that obviously just doesn't work. You're guaranteed to have gridlock. But you can go 3D if you have tunnels. And you can have many tunnels crisscrossing each other with maybe a few meters vertical distance between them, and completely get rid of traffic problems. And it's my understanding that actually Hong Kong is in the process of building some tunnels, and I was very pleased to hear that. That really is the solution for solving traffic in major cities.
Yeah, you can also go 3D with flying cars.
You can.
But that's not going to happen for a long time.
Well, I mean, flying cars sound cool, but then they do make a lot of wind, and they're kind of noisy. And
you've thought this out.
The probability of something falling on your head is much higher.
Yeah. Gotcha. We talked about charging stations and the challenge for rolling out more charging stations in Hong Kong. The challenge is exponentially greater in China, especially in the rural areas to connect the big cities. What are your plans on that?
So we actually have a supercharging network throughout China. You can go, at this point, almost anywhere in China using the Tesla supercharger network. And then we've got, there's a whole bunch of third-party affiliate destination chargers. And we've actually had people drive all the way from Beijing to Tibet. Yeah. So it's wow. Yeah, in a Model S.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Have you driven a Tesla in rural China?
No.
No. Okay.
Other people have.
The Model 3. What can you tell us about the Model 3, what it's going to look like? And I know that you've mentioned to me about it. Sorry.
No, sorry. I can't tell you what it's going to look like.
Okay.
But I mean, I can tell you just generally some characteristics about it, which is it's meant to be a slightly smaller version, sort of a smaller version of the Model S. Yeah. And it won't have quite as many bells and whistles, but it'll be at a much lower price point. Yep. So the intent is to roughly cut the price in half for a smaller vehicle, and I think really that's going to be probably the most profound car that we make, because that'll be I think a very compelling car at an affordable price. Yeah,
this is with the Model 3, the electric vehicle could go fully mainstream. Yeah. Other car manufacturers, we have GM in mind with the Bolt doing the same thing, and you welcome your rivals doing this.
Right. The goal of Tesla from the beginning has been to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport. So we actually did some partnerships. We did one with Mercedes and one with Toyota. Open source IP and everything. So the whole purpose of it was really to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport. So it's always great to hear when other car companies are making electric cars.
Yeah, including car companies inside China.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any Chinese electric car vehicle makers that are capturing your attention, or?
Well, we don't think too much about what competitors are doing. Yeah. Just because I think it's important to be just focused on making the best possible products. Maybe analogous to what they say about, if you're in a race, don't worry about what the other runners are doing.
Yeah.
Just run.
Yeah. But to push that metaphor even more, are you afraid that whoever's hosting the race could tilt the race in favor of the Chinese racer?
I'm trying to figure out if there's any way to answer that question and not lose.
You get one pass during this interview. If you'd like to take the pass, you could take that pass.
Pass on that one.
Okay. We've talked about innovation in China, and I thought your answer was really interesting, and it'd be cool to share it with the audience here. What is the example of made in China innovation that you thought, wow, that's pretty cool?
Well, I think actually a lot of the social media services in China, Weibo, WeChat, pretty impressive. I think better than what is available in the US.
Yeah. Are you on WeChat?
I am, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I only use WeChat when I'm in mainland China on business.
Yeah.
Do you use WeChat in LA and Silicon Valley?
Occasionally to correspond with people in China.
Okay, yeah. See? That's it. Yeah.
But it's pretty good.
Which,
I think Alibaba is pretty impressive as well.
Alibaba is pretty. Do you use Alibaba? Have you used?
No.
You purchased?
I've heard impressive things about it.
Yeah. It is very, very impressive. Yeah. WeChat, how do you use it? Which messaging functions do you like to use on it?
Well, I wouldn't call myself sort of a WeChat expert.
Yeah.
I basically just message people.
Yeah.
And send pictures, and text.
Got it.
Can you do other things?
Now, recently, I did a panel discussion in Beijing with a group of technologists, and the subject came up, or I brought up the question, can there be an Elon Musk in China? And the answer was no. And it was because of, and this is according to Kai-Fu Lee, former head of Google China, who started Microsoft Research in Beijing, and he said it's because of the education system in China. It emphasizes too much rote learning. You are Elon Musk. What do you make of that? I mean, do you agree with that?
Well, I actually, obviously, are a number of very successful entrepreneurs in China.
Yeah, Jack Ma, Pony Ma, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, I'm not sure I would entirely agree with that. But it is generally true that innovation comes from questioning the way things have been done before.
Yeah.
And if in the education system you're taught not to do that, that will inhibit entrepreneurship.
Being able to question what you're being taught, being able to...
Yeah, I mean, just, saying, well, is there a better way?
Yeah.
To ask that question.
Yeah. Let's talk about innovation at Tesla. A few more questions there. So we talked about Tesla Autopilot. There's also Tesla Summon, and I love that name, the Summon, where
right.
you summon the Tesla with your mobile phone. And we did talk about this earlier. I know that there's a big gap between those two programs and self-driving cars. But is Tesla on its way to a driverless model?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole industry ultimately will be producing autonomous cars. And if you fast forward, let's say 10 or certainly not more than 15 years, I think almost all cars produced will be autonomous.
All cars produced will be autonomous?
All new cars, yes. But that's not the same as all cars on the road, because there's roughly 2 billion cars and trucks on the road, and just under 100 million produced every year. So the production rate is only 5% of the fleet size. But if you say of new cars produced, I'd be surprised if a majority of them are not self-driving in, let's say, 10 to 15 years.
And of all those new self-driving cars out on the road, how many of them will have a steering wheel versus not having a steering wheel? Just a remnant of the past, right?
Sure. The steering wheel thing, I'm not sure about. I mean, there may be some, perhaps, auxiliary steering wheel that only pops out, when you need to take manual control for whatever reason. Probably if you go long term, my guess is there isn't a steering wheel in most cars. It would be something that you would have to special order or something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
In most cars, not all cars. And I do want to be clear, like, predictions are not endorsements.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that this would be a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying that this is probably what will occur.
This is pattern recognition and anticipating what's going to happen next.
It's likely. I mean, I think it's sort of like elevators used to have a manual elevator operator.
Yep.
And you'd have somebody would be sort of moving the lever and be able to do fine-tune adjustments of the elevator for each floor. Now there's no manual controller for elevators.
Yeah.
I think it's going to seem the same way for cars.
Yeah. And how about the way consumers interact with driverless cars? How many consumers will choose to own their own car versus signing into a networked fleet of driverless cars?
I think probably still most people will own their own car, but there will be, it's hard to predict the exact percentage, but I mean, I think probably roughly 60-70% of people will probably want to own their cars, and we'll call it 2/3 own, 1/3 share. This is a complete, shooting in the dark guess, but
Yeah.
I think still most people will want to own their own car, but they also may choose to add it to the shared fleet and then take it out of the shared fleet at will.
Yeah. And you don't see that as a threat to your business model?
No, I think just as long as we make great autonomous cars.
It's just additional options for the consumer.
Yeah, it's just adding functionality that I think people will consider quite important in a car in the future. I mean, I've said this before, but I think in the long term, owning a car that does not have autonomous capability will be like a bit like owning a horse.
Yeah.
I mean, you sort of own a horse for sentimental reasons, but not, but not for actual transport.
Yeah. Let's talk about the futuristic-looking Model X. And a question that many Hong Kongers have is, can I park this thing in my parking garage? Because of those falcon wing doors. What's your answer to that?
Yeah, actually, the falcon wing doors are double hinged.
Yeah.
So we call them falcon wing instead of gull wing because they have a dual acting hinge. So they can open in a tighter space than almost any door, and certainly more than a tighter space than a conventional door. If you can physically fit between your car and a Model X, then you'll be able to get in the falcon wing door.
Yeah, and it looks beautiful. I love I mentioned this again when we talked yesterday. I love the Back to the Future series. It reminds me of the DeLorean, which I know I should not compare Tesla to. It looks sci-fi, it looks cool, but it also, and this is important, it serves a design purpose. What is that purpose?
Yeah, so the falcon wing door is designed to improve accessibility of the third row. I mean, typically in a three-row car in an SUV, it's quite difficult to access the third row directly. You have to fold up the second row seat, and you really somehow have to move the seat back of the second row, which if you've got sort of a child seat in the second row can make it really inconvenient to access the third row. By having the falcon wing door, we have a much bigger opening that allows you to directly step to the third row quite conveniently, even if there are baby seats in the second row. And then if you're a mother, putting your child in the child seat in the second row is very easy because you have such a big opening.
Yeah.
And you can step into the car and put the child into the child seat instead of cantilevering your child over sort of through a hole over the baby seat, sort of armrests. It's meant to improve accessibility, and there are really only two ways to achieve that level of accessibility. One is the sliding door of a minivan, and the other is to have something like a falcon wing door. And the reason we didn't go for a sliding door for like a minivan is that it fundamentally constrains the aesthetics of the exterior of the car. And you have to have 3 support rails, which also negatively affect the aesthetics. And that's why all minivans pretty much look the same. And we want to have something that had that level of accessibility and actually has greater accessibility than a minivan door, but also looks good.
This is classic user-centered design. And can I just say thank you for designing for moms.
Absolutely.
And thank you for designing for parents.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I think parents will really enjoy the Model X.
Yeah.
And we're also taking good feedback from customers. For example, one of the things that was asked of some of our Hong Kong customers that have ordered the Model X is to have a partial open function of the falcon wing door. So if it's really heavy rain.
Oh, yeah, so it's like an umbrella or...
Yeah, so you'd want sort of maybe a 50-60% open level, so you have a good shield from the rain.
Yeah.
I think people will be pleased to know that it actually is already in the works.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Just
very
a software
cool.
update.
And something that is also potentially in the works, but only for a select few, a submersible Tesla.
That'll be not anytime soon, but that's just sort of to be a fun side project to have a submersible Tesla. But I think the market for submarine cars is quite small. So.
But you don't have to use the Cross Harbor Tunnel in Hong Kong. You could just go through the Victoria Harbor.
That's true.
That'd be pretty epic.
You could just drive right off the ramp, right off the edge of the the pier.
Be James Bond every day on your commute.
Absolutely.
A Tesla truck, could that ever happen?
Yeah, I think it's quite likely we'll do a truck in the future.
Any more details in that?
No, I think it's sort of a logical thing for us to do in the future.
Okay. Now, with Tesla, your goal has been to make a better car. And you've done that with an electric vehicle that people covet, that has quite a cult following, that's upgradable. But you also want to achieve, and your turn of phrase is very nice, or try to achieve this platonic ideal of a car, right? To reach perfection. So what does the perfect car look like?
Well, I mean, I do use that phrase with our engineering design team, that aspirationally we're in pursuit of the platonic ideal of the perfect car. I mean, who knows what that looks like actually, but you want to try to make every element of the car as flawless as possible. And there will always be, some degree of imperfection, but try to minimize that and create a car that is just delightful in every way. And I think if you do that, then the rest kind of takes care of itself.